Headline from the BBC News. 2 MPs astounded after being denied entry to Israel. 2 Labour MPs, Abtissam Mohammed and Yan Yang, have been denied entry to Israel. They were heading for the occupied West Bank to witness the situation there. But Israel's Population and Immigration Authority said they were refused entry because they intended to spread hate speech against Israel. The Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, has criticised the Israeli authorities, describing the move as unacceptable, counterproductive and deeply concerning.
Pretty close to the truth. 2 British Labour MPs, Yan Yang and Abtissam Mohammed, were recently detained and deported from Israel upon their arrival at Ben Gurion Airport. Israeli authorities accused them of attending to document security forces and disseminate anti-Israel sentiment. These MPs asserted they were part of an official parliamentary delegation visiting humanitarian projects in the West Bank. Israeli officials disputed it, alleging that they supported the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, which is prohibited under Israeli law for non-citizens and non-residents. The incident has intensified diplomatic tensions between the UK and Israel, highlighting differing perspectives within UK politics regarding Israel's policies and the broader Israel-Palestine conflict. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy condemned Israel's actions as unacceptable and deeply concerning, emphasising that such treatment of British parliamentarians is inappropriate. In contrast, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, well, let's see what she had to say.
The Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, was asked about this on BBC Sunday with Laura Kunsberg and asked whether Israel was entitled to refuse entry to the MPs. This is what she said.
Countries should be able to control their borders. What I think is shocking is that we have MPs in Labour who other countries will not allow through. I think that's very significant.
Shocking because?
Well, if you look at the reasons why the Israeli government has given for why they're not letting them in, they don't believe that they're going to comply with their laws. MPs do not have diplomatic immunity. I believe that the people who represent us in Parliament should be people who should be able to go anywhere in the world and people not be worried about what they're going to do when they go into those countries.
Right, so let's start with Kemi Badenoch's claim that UK MPs should be able to go anywhere in the world unmolested. Some critics have suggested that she is conveniently forgetting the fact that Tory MPs are barred from entering China. Several Conservatives were stopped from going there in March 2021 when China imposed sanctions on 9 UK citizens, including Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, Tom Tugendhat, Neil O'Brien, Tim Lawton and Nusrat Ghani, for spreading what it called lies and disinformation about the country. These individuals were subsequently banned from entering China, Hong Kong and Macau, and Chinese citizens and institutions were prohibited from doing business with them. Furthermore, in November 2014, a cross-party delegation of British MPs cancelled a planned visit to China after Beijing refused to grant a visa to Conservative MP Richard Graham. This refusal was in retaliation for a Westminster debate Graham held on pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong.
The Israelis were right to worry that these 2 Labour politicians would break the law if they got into the country.
Well, that's the reason they gave. And what I believe is that every country should be able to control its borders. We do the same thing. There are many people that we don't allow into our country, and I don't think we should be setting precedents in a different way.
So just to be clear, you believe the Israeli government's account of this, not the Foreign Secretary who says they were treated unacceptably?
The Foreign Secretary has given his view. I've given my view.
The Conservatives seem to be closing ranks over this, which is quite interesting for reasons that we'll come to.
Do you agree with Kemi Badenoch, Andrew?
Yes, of course I do. I agree that Israel has a right to determine who enters its country in the same way that, of course, the UK government has a right to determine who enters the United Kingdom. And you have to take the reasons that the Israeli government gave at face value. They're a country at war. It isn't a view that's held by all Tory MPs, and we'll go into the details of that in a moment. But here's an example of one who holds a dissenting view.
I mean, another senior Conservative MP, Richard Fuller, told Times Radio he thought MPs on official trips should be welcomed in any country, adding we should all be very worried about democracy.
When a sitting British MP essentially shrugs off the deportation of fellow MPs by a foreign power, it raises serious questions about where his loyalties lie, or at least what values he's prioritising. So, yes, Israel technically does have the sovereign right to control its borders, like any country. as Kemi Badenoch and Andrew Bowie said. But this isn't some random tourist being denied entry. It's 2 elected representatives of the UK Parliament, and their purpose was a fact-finding mission related to international humanitarian concerns. So Bowie's response, focusing solely on Israel's rights while ignoring the affront to the UK Parliament, sounds less like principled diplomacy and more like political expediency. To the public, it can seem that he's willing to defend a foreign government's actions against members of his own legislature, and he's minimising a serious breach of diplomatic norms, possibly because it aligns with his ideological stance or foreign policy preferences. This undermines the idea that MPs are supposed to stand together when foreign powers try to interfere with or insult the UK's democratic process.
Kemi Badenoch indicating she believes the Israeli government's account that these 2 Labour MPs were up to no good, essentially. What's your take of that? You look quite horrified, I have to say.
I know Abdeslam Mohammed, and I know Yang very well. I know Abdeslam particularly because she's a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. And these are 2 young women who are potential leaders. I mean, people listen to what they say. They are highly respected parliamentarians, and Israel is badly advised to try to alienate them, to humiliate them, and to treat them in this way. Because people listen to what these 2 young women say, and they will do for decades to come. And in my view, Israel really needs to start making friends as opposed to alienating people in this way. I think that it's an insult to Britain, and I think it's an insult to Parliament. I am outraged, and I cannot believe that the leader of the opposition would simply take on the face of it what it is that the Israelis say, because we know that there are times when the Israelis say what the Israelis say first time isn't what they say when they've had a chance to think about it. All we have to think about at the moment is the way in which those people arriving at the scene in ambulances were shot, and the first description and explanation that the Israelis gave, and now they're going back on it. I think that they will rue the day that they did this to British parliamentarians. This is the first time that they've ever refused MPs access to the country, and they were going with a parliamentary group that was organised with Carbu that has brought parliamentarians into the region for decades, twice a year, and frankly, the insight the parliamentarians have is because they visit the area. If Israel has something to hide, then that would be a terrible thing. But frankly, they should be open to parliamentarians going to see what is actually happening on the ground.
Emily Thornberry is absolutely right. There's no reason for us to take the Israeli government's statements at face value, especially given instances where their initial accounts have been revised following new evidence. A recent example is the March 23, 2025 incident in Rafah, Gaza, where 15 Palestinian medics were killed. Initially, the Israel Defense Forces claimed the medics' vehicles lacked proper markings and emergency signals, suggesting a potential threat. However, video evidence later emerged showing clearly marked ambulances with active emergency lights, leading the IDF to acknowledge their initial account was mistaken, and prompting an ongoing investigation. This pattern is not isolated. In May 2021, during a conflict with Hamas, the IDF announced that ground troops were operating in Gaza. International media reported this as a significant escalation. Hours later, the IDF clarified that no such ground invasion had occurred, leading to speculation that the initial misinformation was a deliberate tactic to mislead Hamas fighters. The instances go on back into the past.
You were shaking your head. What's the problem?
These are friends of mine. They are decent, hard-working MPs who would stand up for the interests of the UK, who have never said anything close to hate speech about any country, let alone the Israeli government. And I think it's completely unacceptable, like the Foreign Secretary said, for Israel, and completely counterproductive more than anything else for the Foreign Secretary, for Israel to block their entry. And what I have to say as well is there used to be issues in this country where we put the interests of Britain before petty party politics. And the idea that the Conservative Party no longer believes in standing up for democratically elected British parliamentarians, I think really shows a drift and quite a dangerous direction of travel from the Conservative Party.
Chris Curtis was right to be concerned, because historically UK politics has seen instances where national interest superseded party lines. For example, in February 2023, leading figures from both pro-Brexit and pro-Remain camps, including Michael Gove and David Lammy, held a confidential summit to address Brexit's shortcomings and explore collaborative solutions. This initiative highlighted a commitment to national well-being over partisan divides. And we've already heard how in November 2014 a cross-party delegation of British MPs cancelled a planned visit to China after Beijing refused to grant a visa to Conservative MP Richard Graham. This is acting collectively as a parliament without any party political concerns at all.
It's the extent to which Israel is going to stop people from seeing what is happening. And that's just the West Bank, right? I mean, the West Bank, there's huge problems with what is happening with the expansion of settlements and how Palestinians are being treated there. But they are blocking Labour MPs from going there, Labour MPs that they see to potentially being able to come back and say, this is not right. And that should worry us because that's the West Bank. Think about what's happening in Gaza right now and Israel breaking the ceasefire and the number of people being killed. I mean, everyone would have seen the story of the medics being killed. It's absolutely horrifying. Every time I look on my Instagram, I see some corpse. I mean, it's horrifying. And the thing I would say to Labour, oh, great that David Lammy said something about that they were blocked. But why aren't you doing something about arms sales again? Why aren't you getting rid of that? Why aren't you saying more? Israel's broken the ceasefire. It's killing more people.
All right.
What are you doing?
Well,
Faiza Shaheen there voicing what many are thinking but few in Parliament are saying aloud, that this incident with the deported MPs isn't just about border control or diplomatic protocol, it's a chance to scrutinise Israel's conduct both in the West Bank and Gaza. But few MPs are willing to do that. Why not? In defending Israel at all costs, some MPs are effectively abandoning the principle of mutual respect between sovereign states. So the public should take this with scepticism, with concern, and maybe with a reminder that MPs are elected to represent British interests, not to serve as mouthpieces for foreign governments, especially when those governments are actively undermining the work of Parliament.